You've probably driven past a semi-truck on the interstate and felt a small flicker of patriotic pride. The Mack Bulldog on the hood, the Freightliner script, the International logo pulling into a Walmart distribution center, American Iron hauling American goods on American roads. But here's the thing nobody tells you. That truck is not American in any meaningful sense. The Bulldog on the hood is owned by a company in Gothenburg, Sweden. The Freightliner script is owned by a German corporation in Stuttgart. The International Grill is owned by Volkswagen. And almost every iconic American heavy truck brand you can name, Mack, Freightliner, International, Western Star, Sterling, White, Autocar, is either dead, dismantled, or sending its profits to a boardroom on another continent. So what actually happened? How did the country that invented the modern heavy-duty truck end up with exactly one major Class 8 manufacturer still flying an American flag in its corporate headquarters? The answer is not foreign competition. It is not even bad management. The real answer involves a piece of legislation signed in the summer of 1980 that nobody remembers, and a corporate funeral that broke every record in American bankruptcy history. And the consequence is sitting in your driveway right now, in your refrigerator, and on every shelf of every store you have walked into this week. But let's start with what everyone gets wrong about how an American industry dies. When most people hear the American truck industry collapsed, they assume the obvious story. The Japanese did it, or the Germans. Foreign manufacturers built better, cheaper, more fuel-efficient trucks in the 1970s and 1980s, and American firms could not keep up. Clean, familiar, easy to remember. But here's the problem with that story. If foreign engineering really beat American engineering, why did the foreign firms have to buy the American factories instead of replacing them? Because that is exactly what happened. And in September 1980, the White Motor Company filed for bankruptcy. Not a small bankruptcy. It was the largest Chapter 11 filing in American history, case number 8013361 in the Northern District of Ohio, filed on September 4th, 1980, with approximately $1 billion in unsecured debt. White had been one of the giants. Founded in 1900 in Cleveland, it spent the 1950s and the 1960s buying up every storied American name in heavy trucking, including Sterling, Autocar, REO, Diamond T, and Euclid. By 1980, all of that legacy was insolvent. White then lost another $311 million between filing and December 1981 while sitting in bankruptcy court. The American truck giant was not out-engineered. It had eaten itself alive on bad acquisitions. Then a Swedish firm walked in and bought the corpse for roughly $75 million. In August 1981, AB Volvo acquired nearly all of White's truck-producing plants for a fraction of what those facilities would have cost to build new. Volvo paid far less than replacement cost. But here is what everyone misses. White was not an anomaly. White was the first domino. By May 1981, Consolidated Freightways sold the entire Freightliner brand to Daimler-Benz in Germany. Two of America's top 3 heavy truck manufacturers were gone to foreign owners in a single year. This collapses the obvious story. This was not a story about foreign engineers building better trucks. It was a story about American firms already financially destroyed before anyone overseas made an offer. But the bankruptcy is just the visible part. The real cause was signed into law 11 weeks earlier by a president nobody associates with the death of American trucking. The law that actually killed American truck manufacturing was signed by Jimmy Carter on July 1st, 1980. It was called the Motor Carrier Act. 11 weeks later, White Motor filed the largest bankruptcy in American history. Almost nobody who watches semi-trucks roll past on the interstate has any idea this law exists. Before 1980, the trucking industry was tightly regulated. The Interstate Commerce Commission decided who could enter the market, what routes they could run, and what they could charge. The system was slow, but it was stable. Union drivers earned strong middle-class wages. Carriers had predictable margins. Those carriers bought new trucks on predictable cycles, which kept American manufacturers profitable. The Motor Carrier Act ripped that apart. It removed federal entry controls, it allowed carriers to file their own rates, and it killed the rate bureaus. By 1990, the number of licensed carriers had more than doubled, with over 40,000 new carriers competing for the same freight. But here is where the math gets brutal. Those new carriers competed almost entirely by slashing wages. Real weekly earnings for truck drivers fell by roughly 30% over the next 2 decades. Teamster union membership in trucking dropped by almost 25%. By 1985 alone, shippers were saving $7.8 billion a year on lower freight rates, money that came directly out of carrier margins, out of driver paychecks, and ultimately out of the order books of American truck manufacturers. The same law that gave you cheap freight gutted the buyer base that had kept Freightliner, Mack, White, and International profitable for 40 years. Therefore, the manufacturer's problem was not competition. Their customers could not afford new trucks anymore. And this connects to something sitting in your kitchen right now. The reason you can get a banana for 49 cents in January and same-day delivery on a Tuesday. We'll get to that. But here's where it goes from sad to genuinely strange. Mack was already negotiating with Renault of France, which had taken a 20% stake in Mack in 1979 for $115 million before the law even passed, sensing what was coming. By the late 1980s, the buyer collapse was permanent. Therefore, the second wave was inevitable. But the second wave did not come from carriers or competitors. It came from an agency that no truck manufacturer ever thought could destroy them. The second wave came from the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. On December 21, 2000, the EPA signed a rule that would force every new heavy-duty diesel engine to cut nitrogen oxide emissions by 95% and particulate matter by 80 to 90%, phased in between model years 2007 and 2010. Cleaner air on paper. But the engineering challenge was staggering. Every manufacturer would need to design and certify diesel particulate filters by 2007 and selective catalytic reduction systems by 2010. NARA Economic Consulting found that the 2007 rule alone added approximately $7,000 to the cost of every new Class 8 truck. The research and development bill ran into the billions. Here is what that meant for an American manufacturer already gutted by 20 years of deregulation. You had a smaller order book than 1980. You had thinner margins than 1980. And you suddenly had to spend more on engineering than you ever had in your history. Therefore, the consolidation accelerated. Caterpillar, the largest construction equipment company in the world, announced on June 12, 2008, that it would exit the entire North American Class 8 truck engine market by 2010. Their executive said that with a ceiling of around 240,000 to 250,000 heavy trucks sold per year, it was increasingly difficult to participate as an independent engine maker. Caterpillar walked away. From trucks. Forever. The roll call after that is staggering. Daimler killed the Sterling Trucks brand in October 2008. The St. Thomas, Ontario plant closed in March 2009. The 39-year-old Portland, Oregon plant closed in June 2010. About 3,500 jobs vaporized. Mack Trucks, wholly owned by Renault since 1990, was sold to Sweden's AB Volvo in a deal that closed January 2, 2001, valued at roughly $1.5 to $2 billion. And then the last giant fell. Navistar International, the descendant of International Harvester, the company Cyrus McCormick built, was acquired by Volkswagen's Traton SE for $3.7 billion. The deal closed July 1st, 2021. But here's the part that is almost impossible to absorb. In 1979, every iconic American Class 8 truck brand was American-owned. By July of 2021, everyone except PACCAR's Kenworth and Peterbilt was owned by Germans, Swedes, or Volkswagen. 6 brands. 41 years, a total transfer of an entire heavy manufacturing sector to foreign capital, executed quietly, while the country was distracted by Japanese cars and Chinese electronics. Therefore, what you are about to hear next should change how you see every truck on the road. Because here's where this stops being a corporate history footnote and starts being something you have been touching every day of your life without knowing it. Every package on your porch, every grocery item in your cart, every gallon of gasoline at the pump. The freight system that moved all of it ran almost entirely on trucks designed by Americans but owned by foreign corporations. The Freightliner Cascadia at your nearest Costco, engineered in Portland, Oregon, but the profit flows to Daimler Truck AG in Stuttgart. Freightliner alone owned 36.5% of the U.S. Class 8 market in 2023. More than 1 in 3 new semi-trucks on American highways funnels its margin to a German balance sheet. The Mack with the Bulldog hauling cement past your house, engineered in Greensboro, North Carolina. But Volvo Group books the operating margin in Gothenburg. The International at your local construction site. Its profits flow to Volkswagen in Wolfsburg. International held 13.9% of Class 8 sales in 2023. Add Mack and Volvo together with Freightliner, and foreign-owned brands accounted for roughly 3 out of every 4 new American semi-trucks sold in 2023. The Amazon 2-day shipping you take for granted exists because deregulation in 1980 gutted union driver wages, which crushed the buyer base, which forced American manufacturers to sell themselves to foreign capital, and the foreign capital then built the high-efficiency, low-margin freight infrastructure that delivers your packages. The only major American-owned holdout, PACCAR, parent of Kenworth and Peterbilt, only survived by building its own MX series engines starting in 2009, designed at PACCAR's DAF subsidiary in the Netherlands. Even the survivor needed European engineering to stay alive. And the logos still look American. The Mack Bulldog, the Freightliner script, the International Harvester legacy. They have been preserved because the foreign owners understood that the American iconography was worth more than the American ownership. So here's where you actually land. You started this video looking at a semi-truck and feeling a flicker of American industrial pride. But what you were looking at was the cleanest documented case of an entire American industry being sold off in plain sight. A federal bankruptcy in 1980 broke every record in U.S. history. A deregulation law signed by a Democratic president 11 weeks earlier destroyed the wage base of the carriers who bought the trucks. An EPA emissions rule added thousands of dollars of engineering costs per vehicle right when the financially exhausted manufacturers could least afford it. And one foreign acquisition after another. Volvo took White in 1981. Daimler took Freightliner in 1981. Volvo took Mack in 2001. Daimler killed Sterling in 2009. Caterpillar walked away in 2010. Volkswagen took International in 2021. 41 years. 6 iconic brands, 1 survivor. You are not just looking at a semi-truck. You are looking at the funeral procession of the American heavy manufacturing century with the Bulldog still polished on the hood. And if you think trucks are the strangest case of foreign capital owning the American supply chain, wait until we get into why the engines inside the few American-owned trucks left are not fully American either.